Hello sailors, welcome to another episode of F2PMMO playing World of Warships. Today, as you can see, we're now in New York City Harbor, and yes, we're still playing our little destroyer at level 2, the Smith, but it's been fun. So last episode, if you haven't watched it, please watch it on the right hand top corner banner, is about the power of torpedoes. It is absolutely essential in this game. It is a very powerful tool, especially for smaller ships. If you're playing destroyers, even for some cruisers, they have torpedoes. And it's a great equalizer when you're going up against a battleship, if you're going up against aircraft carriers. So definitely watch the previous episode if you haven't done so on how it actually changes the dynamics of the game. Other things I kind of want to show you is that you could do paint on your boat, you can do flags on your boat. These are buffs, but they are only temporary buffs. So these buffs are used for whatever battle you're going into. And then once you're done with that battle, that round, then the paint buffs or the flag buffs are used. So they're expendables. This episode is about the do's and don'ts using torpedoes. I actually went back to look at some of my older gameplay, and I think these are still co-op games. And one of the things you're going to start to realize in World Warships is if your torpedoes hit one of your allied teammates, you actually get punished drastically. One of the other things I found in this game is how well developed the tech tree is. There's a whole list of different nations from Japan to USA, USSR, Germany, UK, France, Pan-Asia, Italy, Europe, and the Commonwealth, and a slew of their ships going down to different types of destroyers, battleships, cruisers, and some are rare collectibles, such as in the US you have the battleship Texas, Massachusetts, Alaska. Those you have to purchase with the gold coins. Even for the Pan-Asian ones, they have certain destroyers. So you can see there's quite a long tech tree for some of these countries, and this game is fairly, for a free-to-play, fairly developed in depth. And then there's these campaigns. So campaigns are sort of like these rewards for certain tasks that you do, but one of the things is you have to be careful looking at the level of the ships that are required. The minimum I think is level 3 for you to start, and unfortunately we're running a destroyer, level 2 destroyer, so it's a little bit a challenge. You have to kind of upgrade into a level 3, and I kind of understand why. I think by the time you get to level 3 you will actually learn the game fairly better, or at least have a grasp of the very basics. Let's go into the first match. So on this first match, what we want to do is, these are kind of examples on my mistakes, my early rookie mistakes on using torpedoes, and still love how the graphics is done on this game. You can see how the little snowflakes melt onto the camera on the screen, the water waves, the shadow, the light, the bloom effect. It's very well done. I mean, this does feel like we're fighting off the coast of like somewhere like Alaska, one of the colder areas, somewhere closer to the tundra kind of climate level and latitude. So one of the things I want to do that I'm learning as I'm playing this, that I would recommend for others, is when you're first starting out, don't go gun-ho into there like you're Rambo and you're going completely solo here. What you want to do is you kind of want to go with your ships. You want to go with your fleets. You want to go with your group. You kind of want to get an idea where everybody's positioned. And then you want to go in and kind of say, all right, what's my strategy? How do I help my team? What do I want to do? Even though this is a co-op, this is a great practicing stage for when you go into actual random battles and actual PvPs. Because the dynamics of the PvP actually gets much more different than a co-op. The computer will behave one way, but when you actually play against people will behave completely different, and games become much tighter. So one little mistake can literally cause your team quite a bit. So one of the things I want to say is, if you're playing destroyer, especially in the early levels, just because you can zoom in and see a ship doesn't mean you have the range to hit it. Unless you're a cruiser, then yes, you can hit that range. If you're a battleship, you definitely can hit that range. Now, one of the things here I want to say is launching torpedoes. Now, in this scenario, this is totally fine. Reason being is I don't have any teammates in front of me. But if one of my teammates decides to cut right in front of me and the enemy ship, my torpedoes is going to hit my teammate. And that could cause really bad penalties. So one of the things you want to be careful using torpedoes is you want to use it at close range, or at least closer range. And then the other is you want to use like this is the range you want to use torpedoes, not the initial one. And that's where torpedoes are actually most effective, is at closer range. People have a harder time to dodge your torpedoes. Destroyers dodge torpedoes fairly well. They are very maneuverable ships, and they're smaller, and they actually can go up to higher top speed than battleships or cruisers. So this is why you're kind of, if you're playing a destroyer in this game, you're kind of the assassin of the team. You are the support where you set up the smoke screens at the beginning, which I didn't set up my smoke screen. I'm a terrible player right now. See, this is a scenario you got to be careful. My torpedoes are heading that way, and look at where my teammate is. He just came out of my blind spot behind the rocks, behind the island. If he didn't turn or move, my torpedoes would have hit him, and I would have got the penalty, and he would have died from the match, and that would have been terrible. So it is, sometimes it's really you have to be very cautious with how you place your torpedoes. Especially, you don't want to surprise your teammates with torpedoes. They should know where your torpedoes are well ahead of time. So I let him pass, and then I launch my torpedoes. There's no one between us. I assess the situation, but as you can see, even when you launch your torpedoes, the enemy ship can move and change direction at any time, so the initial torpedoes would never hit. One of the things I also want to say is, if you're playing a destroyer, one of the things I've learned is that don't rely so much on your actual cannons. You don't do that much damage. In this scenario, see how far I am from the enemy ship, and see where my enemy ship and where my teammate ship is. You do not want to be launching torpedoes like this, because they're slowly moving, or they're gradually moving, and as they're moving, they basically will get in the way of where your torpedo trajectory is. So you will end up hurting your teammate. So a few notes here on the first game, and we're gonna review those notes a little bit. You're gonna see a theme kind of come around through different games. So here's game number 2 here. This is amazing graphic design. I mean, to make a cloudy look, it's sunshine behind the ship and it is cloudy in front of me. I mean, this ominous, you're about to go into a sea storm, you're about to go into a rainstorm. I mean, this looks amazing. This is, and the way the light is shined on the island in front of me, in front of the rocks, you can see that because it's sunny behind the ship, the bloom effect that goes and projected onto the island in front of me looks really, really cool. So this is, to me, for a free-to-play game, this is really good graphic design. This is really well done. And if you just look at it as I start my ship and the waves that my ship is creating, even at slow speed, I'm going what, a quarter knots, 6.9 knots, going to half speed. So you can definitely see how your actions in this environment interacts and all the different visual effects that are being created. And to me, for a free-to-play game, this is really well done. The other thing I really like about this game is the soundtrack. So if you ever have a chance, listen to the soundtrack as you play this game. It's actually it complements the game very well. Now, one of the strategies is I am following my cruiser, or is that a battleship? Either way, I'm following my larger ship. I want to accompany him. But in reality, I should tell you is, as a destroyer, when you start to get to understand the mechanics of the game, you should be leading the larger ships. You should not be behind the larger ships. You should be leading the larger ships. And I will show you in some of the later gameplays and later episodes on how this works. But basically, your goal is to lead where you set the smoke screen and then you fall back with the rest of the fleet. So you're kind of paving the way and the fog of war in the very beginning so that the big ships can confidently go in. If you look at what the opposing team is doing, you can see that their cruisers have already, not their cruiser, their destroyer have already set the smoke screen for their team. Now one of the things I'm doing here, this is something you have to be very careful. Since it's so early in the game, you shouldn't have another major large ship come in front of you, but if you have a lot of destroyers on your team, guys could be vying for kills. And one of the things you got to be careful is when you're setting up and you're shooting these torpedoes from afar, from the left hand side you can have a teammate cruiser from the left hand side kind of skip over here, and then when they do, they're going right into your torpedo trajectory. So this is something you got to be careful. But since there's no one in front of me, this is totally safe. The other thing you have to know is actual range of your torpedoes. If you're too far, even if you shoot your torpedoes, it does nothing. It'll never reach the enemy, but the enemy will know you're there. It's sort of like in this game where you fire your cannons and you're going from undetected to detected. So as you can see, there's an exclamation mark that says detected. That means somebody sees me, and that means I'll show up on all the enemy ships, all of their radars. So one of the things you got to be careful in this situation again is too far to shoot the torpedoes. You want to be closer to be more effective. And as a destroyer, you absolutely want to use your torpedoes more often. So this is a battleship. One of the things I made a terrible mistake is you never shoot your cannons at a battleship. The reason being is they're highly armored. Your shots don't do anything against as a low tier, I wouldn't say level, but low tier destroyer. You don't do much damage with your cannons, and you don't have that many cannons. You're not like a cruiser where you have like 6 to 12 cannons. But your torpedoes, they are very effective. And what you want to do when you're going up against battleships is you want to sneak up as close as possible without them detecting you, because battleships are very far range cannons. So they're looking at targets very far. So they're zoomed in and they're not seeing you getting close to them. So what you do is you get close to them and then you're like, hey, surprise, and then lo and behold, you got torpedoes just sinking them. So this is a safe distance, but you got to be careful. If you play in actual PvP and not co-op, the battleships will actually prioritize to attack you, and they will not attack anyone else, because torpedoes are a higher priority than far away artillery shots. So this is one of the things. The other thing I want to say is, in this situation, as we'll get into more advanced gameplay, you never want to cross path, meaning you get behind the enemy destroyer, because they leave you a nasty surprise, which is like 6 torpedoes launched your way, and you can't even stop, slow down, or change directions. So I'll show you a technique that I usually use later on. But as you can see, looking at my ship, my HP is really low. I'm pretty much one shot from dead. That's one of the things you have to be careful when you're going up against cruisers and battleships. As a destroyer, you don't have that much armor, you don't have that much HP. What you want to do is sneak up. You want to sneak up to the big ships while the big ships are in firing exchange with other big ships, with your teammates, and they're not paying attention to you, they're not watching you, and that's when you want to go in for the kill. You want to sneak up behind them, you want to sneak up from the side, and you just want to launch as many torpedoes as you can and do as much damage. And then you want to hightail out of there, because the moment you don't hightail out of there, they will find you, because they have crazy range and they will just absolutely shred you. One volley of battleship shots or artillery can knock out a cruiser from at least half health, if not 75% of its HP. As you can see, I got several games of punishment for hurting my teammates using torpedoes. So that is the lesson about torpedoes, is you got to be very careful when you use it, how you use it. close distance is much more preferable, and you want to use it where you know, or at least your teammates and you and well communicated, that you don't get in front of each other's ships, because that's the very likely part of basically sinking your teammates. So this is game number 3. In this one, we're going down the list and kind of looking at what kind of ships everybody has, and everyone's a level 2 in their own individual class, or tier 2, sorry. Then the biggest is a Chester, which is a cruiser, not even a battleship. And now look, we're in a sunny, and look at the shadow from the clouds that's overhead projected onto the ocean. This is top-notch graphic design, in my opinion. This is really well done. The effects, if you ever gone boating, you will see this experience. It's like the wind is blowing your hair, and then all of a sudden this dark shadow just flies over and covers your eyes, and it's just basically the way the clouds are floating and creating some shade. So this last game, phenomenal sunny day. This is a great day to be out on the water. I'm still not confident enough to pull lead the bigger ships, but as I'm watching the cruisers pick up speed, I am going to pick up speed with them, and I want to stay with them. But basically, when you get really good at destroyers for this particular class of ships, you will understand your role a lot better. As you can see, the opponent in co-op has already laid down its smoke screen, and that's what I should be doing for my ships, but I didn't. As you progress into this class, you're going to learn more. Now in this situation, I'm thinking and contemplating about launching my torpedoes. This is not the location to do it. Why? You have 2 of your teammates in front of you. At any moment, if they turn and they don't want to continue to pursue, they will turn right into, I made the terrible mistake. Now look what I'm doing. Launching torpedo, and my teammates are actually in the way. This is a big no-no. You do not want to do this. This is a terrible idea. Luckily for my ship, I only have 2 torpedoes per launch before reloading, per iteration, but you can see it's about to hit my teammate, and I don't think my teammate sees it coming. And yeah, this is a big no-no. This is what's going to happen. See? And I get team penalty right there, and 3/4 of my health on my ship is gone. So this is not something you want to do, because torpedoes, they're very powerful, but they are straight trajectories. It's not like you have a log-on missile where the missile can bend and change course. Torpedoes don't change course; they're a straight shot. So yeah, this is something you absolutely have to be very careful for. You do not want to at any point launch your torpedoes knowing your teammates are ahead of you, because what they'll do is they'll turn, and you have to expect that turn. You have to expect them to basically change directions. So here I'm doing my exchanges with a cruiser, which you do not do cannon exchange with a cruiser, because 1, they have more guns than you. Number 2, they do more damage than you. Number 3, they have more armor. All of these things basically tells you use your weapons to your advantage, and as a cruiser, as a destroyer, you want to use torpedoes. That is where your biggest advantage is. And I'm about to die pretty much at this point, I think. If you look at my HP on the left hand side on the bottom, I'm pretty much dead, and I don't know what I'm doing. So this is clearly one of those new gameplays, but these are mistakes that are good to make early on. You learn from your lessons, you understand what you need to do. So don't launch your torpedoes knowing your teammates are in front of you. Don't launch torpedoes if you don't know where your teammates are on the mini-map. You have to be sure that when you launch torpedoes, you're at a distance where it puts you at an advantage, and 2, doesn't put your team at a disadvantage. So always know that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time on another episode of World Warships. Thanks, and see you then.